Which players from seasons of the NBA's past would be even better if they played today? There always seems to be a bit of tension between Hall of Famers and the current crop of NBA stars. On Inside the NBA, Barkley and Shaq come down super hard on players that disappoint them. They often dismiss them as someone who wouldn't have been able to hang back in the day. But one thing's for certain though, players are more talented in today's era of basketball. The evolution of the NBA player has progressed exponentially to the point where we have 7'4" centers shooting logo threes, and 40-year-olds still being able to dominate night in and night out. Shout out to LeBron. Rosters are deeper, talent and skill are more widely dispersed, and the style of play has changed, becoming a wide open, free-flowing game where size is almost irrelevant. Everyone can play a bunch of different positions and they could do well at it. And those who can shoot the three ball at a high percentage rate are as valuable as a 7-footer in the 80s. Looking back on some tape of the past generations, it doesn't even look like the same sport. Back then the lane is clogged, power forwards take 11 dribbles in the post, and there were barely any teams who would run a pick and roll. But when you watch those tapes, there are also players who leapt off the screen. Players who might have not been the best in those days, but displayed athleticism, skill, or shooting ability that even at the time seemed far ahead of its time. So let's take a look at some of those players whose games would immediately translate to today's NBA. Kevin Harlan's tag team partner on TNT was once considered the best shooter in NBA history. Reggie Miller has had heroics against the Knicks, scoring 8 points in 9 seconds in front of Spike Lee. But looking back, it's kinda crazy to think that Reggie only attempted 4.7 threes per game throughout his career. Today, that would put him right below Kelly Oubre at 82nd overall in the league. There's no doubt that Miller's value would be exponentially greater in today's era, where analytics favor the three ball, and teams design their offense around great shooters. Miller was also one of the best off-the-ball players ever, seemingly never stopping on any given play. Player movement and off-ball action are way more important to a team's offense today, with teams like Golden State leading the way. He'd also get more looks because the pace of today's game would favor his movement and quick shooting ability. The favorability of offensive players in today's games when it comes to officiating would allow him more freedom and space. And with an increase in floor spacing, Miller would have so much more room to be himself. If Reggie played today, he'd likely get off double-digit attempts per game and potentially be a rich man's version of Klay Thompson. Even though this next guy is not the star that Miller was at the time, Steve Kerr would be a better fit in today's game for a lot of the same reasons Miller would be. His 4 championships as head coach of the Warriors have proven there's no limit to his basketball IQ. He has completely reinvented how the game is played in a lot of ways by unleashing and unlocking players like Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. With the increased emphasis on the three ball today and the need for specialized players, Kerr would have a green light anytime he touched the ball. Kerr is statistically the greatest three-point shooter of all time at 45.4%. Unleashing an efficient shooter like that would create havoc for any opposing team's defense. It's also no secret that the undersized Kerr's playing time was limited in his day due to being a defensive liability. But with the modern uses of zone defense and an emphasis on switches, Kerr could be hidden a little more on that side of the ball in today's game. And with his basketball IQ, he could find other ways to be a defensive plus in a system that favored team defense. Not to mention, like Miller, Kerr is one of the most clutch shooters of all time, and he's got the rings to show it. Now we gotta look at our next guy, and he's one of the most dominant players ever. Look, Shaq is one of, if not the most dominant players the league has ever seen. And while most of his championship years saw a bigger and more physically dominant player, young Orlando Magic Shaq would have been a problem in today's game. In a perimeter-oriented league, Shaq would likely be matched up with a lot of undersized centers and stretch forwards. His sheer size, strength, and footwork would overwhelm a lot of the smaller, less physical defenders in today's game. That's not to say he would be athletically overmatched though. Actually, it's quite the opposite. Young Shaq was basically Giannis with more skill. Throw him in today's modern pace and space game, he's not only got more room to operate in the paint, he's got more room to be the ultimate role guy. His years with Penny Hardaway tapped into that a little bit. But if you give him the space we have now, you would be looking at Wilt Chamberlain 2.0. Young Shaq also excelled in the open floor, and in the sped up version of basketball played today, his ability to run the floor, finish, trail, or even start the break would be like trying to stop a speeding locomotive in its track. It's not out of the realm of possibilities that if you place young Shaq in today's game, we might be looking at averages of 35-ish points per game, 15 to 17 rebounds, and 3 or 4 block shots. Here's another shooter that we gotta talk about, and it's Ray Allen. The lasting images of Ray Allen's career are of him drifting to the corner, waiting for a kick out from Bron or Wade, and this obviously resulted in one of the greatest plays in the history of the final. But young Ray Allen was lethal all over the court. Sure, he's inarguably one of the greatest shooters of all time, and his ability to shoot the three alone would make him valuable. But early in Allen's career with the Bucks and Sonics, he was one of the premier slashers in the league, using his shooting prowess to create space and attack the rim at will. His size and ability to play defense would also add to his value. At 6'5", he could defend multiple positions and play multiple positions on the other end, creating mismatches all over the court. And in an era where it wasn't valued near as much as it is today, few players took care of their body like Allen did. This allowed him to play 19 years, contributing up until the very end. If he played today, Jesus Shuttlesworth might be a 30-point per game scorer and create a real conversation between him and Steph. It would probably still be Steph, but who knows? Rasheed Wallace was one of the most versatile big men of his time. In his era, big men who could space the floor were rare, but in today's NBA, they are a premium. Wallace's ability to knock down threes would make him an ideal stretch 4 or 5 in modern offenses. Wallace's combination of size, skill, and mobility would make him a perfect fit for the modern positionless NBA. He had the agility to defend smaller players on switches and the strength to guard traditional big men, making him a valuable asset in today's switching defensive scheme. Offensively, his ability to score inside, shoot from the mid-range, and stretch the floor would allow him to play either as a power forward or as a dominant center depending on the lineup. Today's offenses would be able to maximize his skill set and basketball IQ in today's space and pace play. Plus, his passion, fiery personality, and competitive edge would make him fun. He wouldn't just be a leader on the court, but someone whose personality would fit seamlessly with the Draymond Greens and Dylan Brooks of the world. Wallace finished his career averaging 14 points, 6 rebounds, and a block a game. With his size, skill, and approach to the game, it's not hard to believe that he would double up his per-game averages in the modern NBA. Now let's take a look at a guy who was probably way before his time, even more so than anybody on this list. Pete Maravich's life and career is that of a legend. Search YouTube for Pistol Pete and you'll get all kinds of highlight tape options that would put the best and one mixtapes to shame. No one player in the history of basketball seemed as futuristic as Pete did in the 70s. Building on the fundamentals his dad instilled in him growing up, Maravich turned the basketball court into a canvas, and he created artistic masterpieces every time he touched the court. His creativity, handle, and passing ability weren't just ahead of his time, they might even be futuristic in today's game. Then coaches often tried to bottle him up and make him a scorer or put him in a more traditional system, but the freedom of today's game would allow Pete to push the boundaries of what is possible on a basketball court. Maravich was also one of the most skilled shooters the league had ever seen. He left LSU as the leading scorer in college history, averaging 44.2 points per game, and the best part is that was without a three-point line. The NBA didn't even adopt the three-point line until Pete's last 2 years when injuries and an undiagnosed heart condition caught up to him. He ended up only taking 15 threes in his career, hitting 10 for a percentage of 66.7. He would be a master of the pick and roll with his ability to read defenses, shoot off the dribble, and make passes few in history could see. He was also another player whose size and versatility would allow him to play positionless basketball in today's game. Not to mention his style and charisma and his showmanship would make him a global superstar in today's media-driven world. His personality and highlights would dominate social media, making him one of the most marketable players in the league. Andrei Kirilenko, aka AK-47, was one of the most versatile and impactful players during his NBA career. His game, which combined elite defense, athleticism, and all-around versatility, would make him even more valuable in today's NBA. Kirilenko was an elite defender capable of guarding multiple positions, from guards to power forward, and he was a disruptive force with incredible instincts, averaging 1.4 steals and 1.8 blocks per game for his career. In today's NBA, where switching defenses and versatility are critical, Kirilenko would be a defensive cornerstone. He could anchor a team's defense in a similar role to Draymond Green, Mikal Bridges, or Jaden McDaniel, and I have no doubt that he would excel as a wing stopper or a small ball center. His ability to protect the rim, defend in isolation, and cover ground would make him a perennial Defensive Player of the Year candidate. He's another player who could play positionless basketball on both ends, especially in small ball lineup. He could handle, pass, and he could basically play all 5 positions on the court on both ends. Kirilenko was also the ultimate team player who didn't need high usage to be effective. He excelled at doing the little things, setting screens, making smart passes, and hustling on defense. This unselfish style of play would make him a perfect fit for modern teams and emphasize ball movement. Now we gotta move on to one of the best shooters of all time. This guy retired as the league leader in free throw percentage, so who do you think it is? Well, here it is. Mark Price's skill and basketball savvy would put him at the top of today's point guard ranking. Another elite shooter who was handcuffed by the style of play of his time, Price's 2.4 threes per game would easily jump up to double digits, while still shooting at a 40% clip. But not only was he an elite shooter, Price was a true pioneer of the pick and roll. His ability to read defenses was like that of an elite quarterback, paired with his passing and quick shooting ability. He's often credited with being one of the first guards to attack a double team by splitting defenders thanks to his quick first step and his ability to stop and change pace on a dime. Not having to deal with such congested and clogged lanes, Price's ability to slice and dice would create many a problem in today's spread out game. In his time, Price's true shooting percentage and assist to turnover ratio were elite, even without the benefit of modern analytics to emphasize those contributions. In today's game where analytics are used to maximize efficiency, Price would be recognized as one of the most valuable offensive players in the league. If Price entered the league today, we could be looking at a perennial 25-10 guy and a multiple-time member of the 50-40-90 club. In the 80s, DeMontis' dad, Arvydas Sabonis, was widely considered to be the best player in the world that wasn't in the NBA. But even though he didn't get to the league until he was on the downslope of his career, Arvydas' game wouldn't just translate to today, it would be transcendent. Sabonis was basically the predecessor to Nikola Jokic. Sabonis was an extraordinary passer, often compared to guards in his ability to see the floor and make precise creative plays. He could pass out of the post, hit cutters, initiate fast breaks, and make cross-court passes with ease. In today's NBA, Arvydas would thrive as a playmaking center, orchestrating offense from the high post or top of the key. He was also a great shooting big man whose touch and range would allow him to stretch the floor and open up cutting lanes for his teammates. Sabonis had one of the highest basketball IQs of any player, excelling in reading defenses, making the right decisions, and adapting to different situations. His ability to diagnose plays on both ends of the court would make him a leader in advanced analytics metrics, like player impact estimate and real plus-minus. His size, strength, and instincts would also make him a valued rim protector and defensive anchor. He would also be a pick-and-roll monster. Moving on, Charles Barkley is one of the 50 greatest players of all time. His ability to be a dominant power forward in an era dominated by 7-footers is a true testament to how incredible he was. But what if he played in today's NBA? Barkley was an absolute force in transition, often grabbing a rebound and pushing the ball coast to coast himself. His quickness, strength, and agility for a player of his size made him nearly unstoppable in the open court. In today's faster-paced NBA where transition scoring is emphasized, Barkley would thrive in a system designed to maximize his ability to run. Barkley was essentially a prototype for modern small ball basketball. Despite being undersized for a power forward or center, his strength, leaping ability, and skill allowed him to dominate. He was an elite rebounder, averaging almost 12 a game for his career despite his lack of height. And his combination of timing, strength, and relentless energy allowed him to dominate the boards and would push everyone to greater height. He would also be an analytics darling. Barkley was one of the most efficient scorers of his era with a career true shooting percentage of 61%, and if you wanted to know, that was well above league average. He excelled at scoring near the rim, drawing fouls, and converting free throws. Plus, he's still one of the most polarizing figures in basketball today as he sits behind the desk. Imagine if young Barkley was unleashed on TikTok or Instagram. So while the game has truly evolved, there are still unicorns of the past that could dominate in today's NBA. Leave a comment down below if there are any other players from the past we didn't touch on that you think could be superstars in today's league. And as always, click on the screen for more basketball content.